Welcome to Was I in a Cult Part 85. I know my hair is looking pretty crazy right now. It's giving 80s vibes, and that's okay because we're almost near Halloween, and maybe I'll just be a character from the 80s. So my Gen X know this scrunch that we always used to do in the 80s and the early 90s. And I can't believe this series is already in the 80s. I mean, part 85 already? That's crazy. And it wouldn't be 80s hair if there wasn't a hair flip in the middle. And the higher the hair, the better. So anyways, let me get to the point or points of my story. I left off talking about how I had been going off with Monica, even though Pastor Hendrick told us that we shouldn't be hanging out together and actually forbid us to hang out together. As a 27-year-old, I was allowing this man to tell me what to do with my life and tell me who I could spend it with and hang out with and talk with and who I could see, because that's what a cult does, is they control your life. So you might be thinking, oh, that's normal. That's what leadership does in churches. You know, they're helping to guide you and direct you. And it's like, wait, isn't God supposed to guide me and direct me? Like, man is not the person I'm trusting in. Man is not the person leading me. Man is not the person that should be telling me how to live my life and what I should do with my life. And I didn't see anybody in the Bible telling people who they could hang around with or not hang around with. Like, people hung around with who they wanted to hang around with. They weren't told that they couldn't hang out with certain people. And as a grown woman, I think it's funny to me to realize that someone that's 27 years old is letting a man tell her who she can hang out with and who she could see or talk to on the phone, which is insane to me. And so if you think that's normal, then you might be in a cult. Oh no, my hair is trying to look flatter, and we can't have that because, you know, the higher the hair, the closer to Jesus. So when I took Monica to my mom's house in Sacramento, which is about 6 hours away from where we lived, I remember just feeling like I could live my life, you know what I mean? And I didn't have to, like, worry about what anyone was going to say or think, or, you know, anybody judging me for being a lesbian. And we had this really cool road trip that I'll never forget. And I just remember that we stopped in all these cities. We took like this kind of like road trip where we drove up the coast. And we just stopped in all these little beach towns along the way. And, like, we stayed at a hotel in Santa Barbara, and then another one in Monterey. And then, like, it was just, like, I think we made a 6-hour road trip into, like, a 12 or 13-hour road trip, you know, because we did go on the coast when we could have just went straight on the 5, and it would have been a lot faster. But you know, I wanted this road trip to last as long as I could possibly make it last, because I wanted to spend all that time, you know, with Monica. And so it was a great trip, and it was like a good last run on our relationship, basically, because after that, when we got back home, you know, she, I guess, was talked to by her leadership, and then she decided that she was going to obey her leadership and stop seeing me. But the coolest thing about that road trip is that we took my nephew, and we literally felt like a family. I mean, to me, it was something I longed for my entire life, was to have a family. And, you know, in my little dreamland, I thought, you know, maybe this could be possible, and maybe we could just live our lives together as a family. But the problem is that both of us still wanted to be a part of the church and be a part of that ministry, and us being a family in that church was not an option. I remember trying to hide it from my mom because, like, I really didn't want my mom to know that I was a lesbian yet. Um, I didn't know how or when I was planning on coming out to her. So I do remember that, like, we would all hang out together, and then when she went to bed, we thought we were going to be alone, and then we started snuggling, and then she came out of the room, and I, like, flew out of Monica's arms, and it was like the most awkward situation ever. And then my mom just like kept talking to me, acting like nothing was happening. And I was like, did she see like what happened? And like throughout the weekend, I think like I remember, she would catch us like either close or holding hands or maybe sneaking a kiss here and there. And um, it wasn't until like when we left and went home and stuff that I talked to my mom a couple of days later, and she was like, um, "Are you and Monica together?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of. We were, but we're not at the same time. Like, we're like." We love each other, but we can't really be together because the church doesn't allow it. And she was just like, you know, who cares what the church thinks? You know what I mean? Like, she was like, I believe that God loves everyone. And she just tried to like encourage me, and she just tried to tell me like that she was accepting of it and that she was okay with me being gay. And I was just like, I'm not okay with me being gay. Like, why are you being so accepting? And it was just like, it was really cool to have my mom be accepting like that and tell me like, basically she told me to leave the church because like she's like, if you're a lesbian you can't change that, so why are you going to stay in a church where they're going to expect you to change? And just leave the church and be yourself. And that was like the best advice I could ever get from my mom. And to have that acceptance and like unconditional love was everything to me. But I wasn't in the place of where I had unconditional love or acceptance for myself at the time. Because that's what happens when you're brainwashed by a cult. You can't love or accept yourself for who you are because you feel too guilty and too ashamed to be anything that the church doesn't want you to be. My grandparents had raised me, and I knew that they were against me being a lesbian, so that even further took away any desire inside of myself to accept myself for who I was. I was definitely more interested in pleasing my grandparents than I was pleasing my parents because, like just having my mom's acceptance wasn't enough for me. Like, I needed to be accepted by my grandparents, and I needed to be accepted by my church and my peers in my church. So yeah, there was no way at that point in my life that I was ready to accept myself for who I was. So after returning from the vacation of my life, which I loved so much, I had to come back down to reality when I returned and dropped Monica back off at her brother's house, and I went home. And when I went back to church, I had to basically face the music. I don't know if you remember Arlene, the one that I told you that I became close with, and we used to party together and go to clubs and gay bars and gay pride together. Well, she ended up returning to church, the smaller church in the city of Azusa that was the same church as mine, but just in a different city. And things got crazy. She called my old leader Sandra and told her my situation. And basically shit hit the fan. Arlene thought she was helping me by telling on me. She didn't realize that she was going to make my life worse. But I'm out of time, so I don't have time to tell you that part of the story. So I'll tell you that later. Bye.